All right, I just got done seeing the Backrooms. I just got done watching the Backrooms. It was great. You know, I was honestly, okay, I'll be honest with you, I was a little petty. I was like, man, these guys, you know, like, well, I guess let me give the context. The context of, I think, the Backrooms and Obsession, I was kind of like, I was a little petty because I'm like thinking about these movies and I'm like, you know, like you got these young guys. I think I was probably more jealous. But watching both of them, they're both really good movies. I prefer the Backrooms a lot more. I prefer the Backrooms way more than I do Obsession. But that's just because I like worlds. I like movies about worlds. I like movies with world building. So this is a really fun movie to speculate about. I really did enjoy the project. I enjoyed the film a lot. There's a lot to dissect, and okay, to give preface to, so that's kind of like the reason why I say I was a little petty. But I had seen a lot of information online. This movie's very polarizing, and I'll kind of get to my perspective on that and why I think that is. But reading just how many people were saying, oh, it's bad, it's not good, you know, it's this, that, blah, blah. I was kind of going into it a little like concerned, you know, the director, you know, the creator of it just went on, it was like a thing from Discussing Film on Twitter, and he talked about how he's like looking for a co-writer, and I don't even think he wrote this movie. The writer was totally was somebody else. But either way, everyone was like saying that, oh, like he learned because this movie wasn't well written and the characters and the dialogue aren't very good. So, or they're not strong. They're not as like. To me, that's just a weird criticism. I just don't really see that. The movie was really, really fun. It was, you know, and I don't mean fun as in like I was like it was like a roller coaster or anything. It was just really exciting and really interesting the entire time. The entire movie, you're just watching it wondering what's going to happen. You want to really know the deep meanings of everything. And I think that's why people don't like this movie. That's one of the reasons. Because it doesn't spell it out for you. And you can tell that this movie is going to be a line of films. I almost said Succession. But there's going to be multiple films. This will be a whole series, which will be really cool. I really loved the themes within the movie. There's a lot, and this is, I think, going to the second reason why I think people don't like this movie. This is a movie for young people. This is not a movie for boomers or for, I would even say, millennials. Like, this is a young person movie. Red Letter Media, I love watching their stuff. But I haven't seen the review of it, but somebody wrote like a comment that they had like a good take, and it's just like what Gen Z has gone through. And I did not watch the clip. I swear to you, I did not watch the clip. But it is so true that just the way that we as Gen Z experience life, we just experienced it very differently than before, and the horror that we conceive in our minds, like the stuff that scares us the most are the things that are totally, you know, normal, or I guess regular for like millennials, boomers, you know, Gen X, all that jazz. And, you know, I would even say, you know, I guess in some ways it could be even more deadlier or maybe even a little bit more grotesque, you know, thinking about like Terrifier and stuff. But this film's whole like horror element is really fear of the known. That's really what I got from it. It's not fear of what's, you know, coming, or like, you know, obviously that's there, but really what I got from the themes are, it is like knowing that what is there. So I know that there, you know, and some people are like, that doesn't make any fucking sense, but to me, I loved just the characters, and, you know, the world is not just this like formless, you know, or random happenstance. It is a reflection of obviously the world that we live in today, but it takes it to such a degree. It twists it, and it tries to imitate it as best it can. And I felt like the characters and all of the characters that were written were basically helped enhance this story. And the ending frame, which I won't say here, but the ending frame was just, I think, a really powerful piece, because it helps reinforce that. And I think a lot of people are, you know, I think they probably see that ending frame and they are immediately confused. They're like, well, what does that mean? You know, is it, you know, did she die? Is she alive? You know, there is just, you know, which obviously I don't think that's the case, but it's really cool to see, the back, you know, I think just I know, it's bad. It's really, really cool to see just the dynamics of the audience, I guess the split, just seeing like who likes it and who doesn't like it. And that split down the middle of hate and love, that's when I think, you know, that you've made a good movie. That's when you know it's a good movie, is when it does have that divisiveness. Because most of the time it does kind of weed out not to be like, this is the most like sophisticated intellectual movie out there. It just means like there's a lot that's going on with this movie, and you do have to pay attention. And there's just a lot underneath the surface, so to speak, and not to no pun intended. So I think that was I really did enjoy this movie. I enjoyed this a lot more than the other film that has just recently come out, Obsession. But I think what's really cool about both of those movies is not the aspect of YouTubers making movies. I think it is really like who are making the movies. That is like a really cool element. It is cool like having some like fresh voices, you know, the YouTube element, yes, but really just people with ideas and people who are, you know, willing to lay everything out bare. And it's really exciting, I think, just for the next little bit. My only concern is this, as if this is like life-changing, or I guess life-threatening. My only concern is horror movies are fun. I like horror movies. The film that I'm working on right now is a horror piece, or I guess maybe a thriller. But I think that the problem with the horror stuff is it is great because everybody will see it, and it's really an opener for discourse about the world itself and about reality itself. But the problem is that it is kind of true that like anyone can make something like a horror movie. Like, I think Blumhouse is just the perfect example. This isn't this. I want to be a good. All right, I'll turn that on. I want to be a good filmmaker, and so obviously, like, you know, I'm saying this in pursuit of that. Even if I make something that isn't good, even if I make a horror movie or a thriller movie that isn't scary or isn't whatever, like, I think my point still stands that horror and thriller is not a very difficult thing to produce. And obviously so. And I think a lot of times we give these filmmakers and we give them a lot of leeway. Maybe not leeway. We give them a lot of credit. We'll say that. We give them a lot of credit because it's a horror movie, because it's a movie that makes a lot of money and a lot of people are talking about it. But that's a lot of horror movies. You know, there's a lot of, you know, Five Nights at Freddy's, Freddy Fazbear is almost exactly that. The first movie, you know, it is this horror movie that is just bound to be successful, because even if you've never played the video games, the premise itself is kind of freaky. And with Five Nights at Freddy's and with the Backrooms, they all kind of share, on a side tangent, they all kind of share that similar theme of, would you call that, like, I guess, rotten nostalgia? I don't know what you would call that, but that's, like, I think the term that, like, comes to my, or the phrase that comes to my mind, rotten nostalgia. But so that, I think, so anyway, think about that with the culture, where a lot of times I remember being a kid watching like lost media videos, and you know, that's a really freaky thing, you know, watching a movie like, or watching projects like found footage stuff. Obviously that was freaky, which, by the way, in this movie is amazing. They're super great, very freaky. Yeah, though those elements, when I was a kid, you know, watching something that seemed real was just super fascinating. And I think that's what Gen Z really loves about the Backrooms and about whatever, is it gives this nostalgia, this thing that we like experienced. Obviously it twists it and it manipulates it, but it really hits that reality, that it's gone. You know, that the past that we lived, the life that we lived is gone. And it's a really sad and frightening thing that we'll never get it back. And it's a heartbreaking thing to realize that you shouldn't strive to go back. Going back to the Backroom story, that's what I really loved about this movie, because I feel like that was, you know, really its main theme. And it was, you know, just that whole idea alone is why this movie is a Gen Z movie. Not to be like trendy, or I guess what modern, I don't know, not to just say vocab words that are like trendy for today. This movie really does hit home for a lot of us who grew up with really in between generations of really shit and, I don't know, technological like advancement. You know, like, there's just so much to really chew on with this movie. And, you know, maybe, you know, there were definitely some elements where like the script wasn't great, but for a movie like this, I don't think you need to have a stellar, like a fucking super sophisticated, you need a world. You need a world that you can really think about and dive into and really get lost in. That's what people really want. Why do you think Star Wars is so fucking great? Honestly, Star Wars is not that good. I'm not a big Star Wars guy. I do like Star Wars, of course. Like, I grew up with it. But I'm not like a Star Wars person. And I'm only saying that just to give context, that I don't think the Star Wars movies are that great story-wise. That's not why people like Star Wars. People like Star Wars because of the world. People like Star Wars because it's a world that is totally different and unique from our own, but also very similar in the people. You have Luke Skywalker, who is just like every other person. somebody who strives to be better, strives for world, and the world that he experiences and that he goes in, he basically gets to be a part of that. And with this movie, what's so great is the story is not perfect in the sense that it's not this grand epic, the dialogue isn't, amazing. The world is so exciting. It's so interesting and vast, and you get lost in it. And that is what is the most important element with this film. So I think the state of filmmaking, this doesn't really, and going back to the horror element, I don't think that this is a movie that is really going to change the landscape of filmmaking. I just don't really see that. I see this being a film that is going to impact filmmakers, and it's going to bring in new, obviously new directors and new styles. Yes, but what I mean is, this is not a movie that will be, I think, mindful on the majority of people. This does not have a element that I think really brings and sparks change within people. That is, I think, the hope with this. That, I think, is that's what my desire is for my films. And I think this movie does have that in elements. But the only reason why I don't say vast and large, is because it is so hard for people outside of Gen Z, I think, to really understand why it is that this movie connects with us, why it could connect with us, or why it could connect with somebody who's in, Generation Z or Gen Alpha. This is a Zoomer movie. This is a Zoomer movie. This is the summer. Zoomer summer. Blockbuster. Yeah. Blockbuster Zoomies. But I think that's just my only critique in the sense of I think the cultural impact. This, I think, will definitely have an effect on the young people. I'm curious to see how far that will reach and how deep that will go. Because I think the thing with horror films is they do last and they leave a really good impression. But sometimes a lot of them it really, it just becomes that a horror movie. And I was thinking about this, I was thinking about that murder that happened over in Britain, the Henry, I forget his name, Wolford, that's not his last name. But either way, with that killing, and I was just thinking about the way that we, as I would say whites, but just people see themselves. And that, to me, it's like you have these horror movies, and it's great because, I think a lot of the online right is talking about like we got white people in, and that's why these movies are great. And it's yes, but they're making horror movies. They're making horror movies about honestly, women and browns getting killed, and killing other people. So it's just the movie is not yes, it's true, but how are we actually leaving a lasting impression on the youth? How are we leaving a lasting impression that's actually going to develop, the next generation, to encourage them to believe in themselves? These movies are great because they do inspire those who want to make movies. But what about people who love, who are just average Joe